Back in the 70s, when I first started building rods, we used to go out and buy the best fiberglass blank we could find. We'd pick up that rod and said, man, that blank really feels good. That really feels good. But then we'd wrap the guides on that rod, and the guides those days were so heavy and big that that would change the action of the rod and dampen it and cut down on the performance. Then the guide manufacturers started coming out with smaller, lighter guides, and with these small micro guides, you can now build a rod lighter and more sensitive than ever. Here's an example of the guides we used to use compared to the guides that we use today, which are smaller and 6 times lighter. Here you can see how small the guide foot is on these micro guides. It's a little more than 1/8 inch long, and the ring is only 4.5 millimeters. The one problem that I warn people about is that the guide feet are so small, it's a little bit tough to secure the guide to the blank. We used to use 10 or 12 pound monofilament on our casting reels. But nowadays, most of my friends have gone to 30-pound braid on their casting reels. And that braid is more sensitive and doesn't stretch at all. If you happen to get your guides tangled in this heavier braid line, it is possible to rip the guide right out from underneath the wrapping on a blank. I build rods for myself, my kids, and my friends. And we're all pretty tough on rods. Some of my friends are guides and they fish with them almost every day. I don't want to have to deal with a guide being ripped off of a rod. So I'd like to show you how we deal with that. Here we're going to demonstrate an example of what I call a locking wrap. First I glue my guides onto the rod with guide foot adhesive, and notice I have to use a pair of pliers to hold that guide because it's so small, so I can glue it on the rod. And I'll start a wrap about a 1/16 of an inch from the end of the guide foot. And I'll wrap the line over itself and turn it for about 4 or 5 turns. I'll clip off that little loose end right there. Start wrapping that. Okay, I'll stop about 2 wraps from where the guide foot turns up. I slide in a little Power Pro Super Slick. That's what I use to tie off my lines with. I hold that thread and I wrap a line all the way around the base of the guide foot. I'll bring it around in front of that guide and wrap all the way around the base. I'll do that 2 or 3 times. If I'm building the rod for my buddy in Florida who catches a lot of tarpon on light rods, I want to do it 3 times. I clip that line off and run it through that super slick line, pull it through. Boy, it pulls through nice with that line. I'll pull a gap in my thread, then I'll cut it off with a sharp knife, very sharp knife. I don't saw, I chop. And I kind of pull on the thread at the same time. Okay, I use my burnishing tool, bone burnishing tool, to pull that thread together, but right there at the base of the guide foot, it's hard to use a burnishing tool, so I have a little piece of plastic that I use to slide that thread up there good and tight and lock that guide in. And that guide's ready to be finished. On another note, I don't like to use color preserver on a micro guide. The color preserver acts as a barrier to prevent the super strong epoxy from soaking into the thread, grabbing hold of that guide foot and rod blank, and really holding that guide on. It's hard to imagine a rod getting any better than this, but somehow, every now and then, something changes and they get a little better.